Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. So we're going to start today, we're going to continue inshallah, where we left off last time in matn Abu Shuja'. What we talked about last time were the invalidators of prayer, right? Mubtilat al-salah. And we talked about 11 things. Al-kalam al-amd, speaking outside of context of prayer on purpose, meaning saying something, talking to someone else, or saying something that has nothing to do with prayer at all. Wal-amal al-kathir, excessive movement, and we talked a bit about that and how there's different opinions on what excessive movement is. Wal-hadath, which is religious impurity. وحدوث النجاسة, meaning impurities, physical impurities coming on your body, coming on your clothing, or being in a place where you're praying. وانكشاف العورة, exposure of the parts of your body that you need to cover during prayer. وتغيير النية, changing your intention in the middle of prayer will ruin your prayer. واستدبار القبلة, and then moving or facing in a direction that is opposite to Qibla, or at least 90 degrees. For the Shafi'iyya, it's a matter of your torso moving 90 degrees, then you lose your prayer. وَالْأَكْلُ وَالشُّرْبِ, eating and drinking. الْقَهْقَهَ, laughing out loud. وَالرِّدَّةِ, and apostasy. So those are the reasons, or those are the invalidators of salah. Now, today we're going to read, it's a bit less content heavy. So before I start, I'm going to talk about two things that don't exist in the matn or exist later, but I want to talk about them now, just to kind of make sure everyone knows about them. The first thing, what was the first thing I want to say? Subhanallah. Jalsat al-istiraha, just in case that you guys want to. So you see when they're doing an odd number rak'ah, right? When you finish sujood and then you stand up immediately, correct? Sometimes you will see the imam will sit for a short period and then will stand up, correct? You guys see that sometimes or not? Yeah. So Shaykh Abdul Fattah, for example, when he prays Isha, he'll go from rak'ah number 1 to rak'ah number 2. He won't stand up immediately. He'll sit for a second or two, and then he'll stand up. And this is called Jalsat al-istiraha, right? Jalsat al-istiraha is a sunnah for the Shafi'iyya, meaning the Shafi'iyya see it as a sunnah. The Hanabila, they have two opinions in their madhab. One opinion says it's sunnah, and another one says it's not, so they're kind of divided on that specific issue. And the Hanafi and the Malikiyya don't see it as a sunnah at all. At least for the majority of opinions within the madhab, they don't see Jalsat al-istiraha to be a sunnah. So when it comes to Jalsat al-istiraha, that 1 or 2 second sitting before you stand up, it's kind of 50-50. Hanabila and Shafi'iyya say it's a sunnah, and then the Hanafi and Malikiyya say it's not, even though the Hanabila have a division and the Malikiyya have a division as well. But generally speaking, that's the cut down of it.
Follow the imam?
So you can either follow the imam or just do what you want to do. You don't necessarily have to follow the imam because it's a hay'ah or it's a sunnah, so it's not something that is wajib. So you don't have to follow. However, the only problem would be if the imam did jalsat al-istiraha and made takbir before he actually stood up, then that would be the issue. So if he's making sujood, and then he's going to stand up, but he sits for the Jalsat al-istiraha. He says Allahu Akbar when he's in Jalsat al-istiraha, before he actually stands up. And the person behind him doesn't do it, then the person behind him will end up standing up before he's even up, and that's a problem. And we'll talk about that inshallah next time. Meaning if you go before the imam, if you make a movement before the imam doesn't, then what happens? We'll talk about that inshallah. So that's the first one. That's Jalsat al-istiraha. Yes?
Are there any views to do that for all of the rak'ah, or only like after the tashahhud? Is it like when you're doing the brief pause, is it only
it's an odd number rak'ah.
Only, so
yeah.
There's no view that says to do it like every coming up.
Well, that's every coming up from sujood is an odd number rak'ah. Right? So every odd number rak'ah is you're leaving from sujood to standing up. So the Shafi'iyya see that you do something, you sit, you have a small pause. So I'm making sujood and I want to come up. So this is without Jalsat al-istiraha. With Jalsat al-istiraha, I do this. I come up like this, and then I stand up. So that's called Jalsat al-istiraha. The Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila see that to be a sunnah, and the Hanafi and the Malikiyya say no. But I just thought that I would bring that up. Yes.
When would you say Allahu Akbar?
So you would say Allahu Akbar when you're close to being up. So the only problem with this is the imam says Allahu Akbar when he's still doing the actual sit down, and the guy behind him doesn't do it. Then the guy behind him says Allahu Akbar, he's up, and the imam is still halfway there, and that's problematic. But
the second rak'ah is not the odd second rak'ah.
Sorry?
When we stand up the second rak'ah, it's not hard.
What do you mean it's not hard?
Odd.
No, during So you're standing up from an odd rak'ah. This is the first rak'ah. So you're coming up from an odd rak'ah, from an odd one. You're coming up from an odd rak'ah to an even number rak'ah. Correct? And after the even number rak'ah, there's tashahhud always. Right, so from an odd number rak'ah, you stand up immediately. Yeah, from odd to even, then you end up there. Okay, that's the second thing is when the second thing I want to talk about before we continue with the matn is if you're praying ma'moom by yourself, meaning only two people are praying together. Only two people are praying imam and ma'moom. Right? So what do we do? Where do you stand? If the imam is standing and then and you want to come and you want to join someone's prayer and you want to follow them, then where do you stand? We're going to talk about the concept, but where do you stand? Because I want to forget to talk about that. You stand on the right side, right? As long as your heel is not in front of his heel, the imam's heel, then you're fine. Meaning you stand on the right side, you can stand a bit behind. The Hanafiya see that your toes should be in parallel to his heel, right? And the Hanabila see, no, you should be closer, meaning closer up a bit. But as long as your heel, as a person praying behind an imam, is not in front of the imam's heel, then you're fine. As long as you're on the right side. You can pray on the left side. It's against the sunnah. You don't lose your prayer except for the Hanabila, except for Imam Ahmed. Imam Ahmed says salatuhu tabtul, meaning you lose your prayer completely. But the Jumhur say you don't lose your prayer, but you did the opposite of the sunnah. You should stand on his right. Okay, so just so you guys know the different. So as long as you're not, your heel is not ahead of his, you're fine. If it's equal or behind, that's fine. Take it back a bit so you don't make a mistake and end up in front of him, because you shouldn't be in front of your imam. Okay, we continue. So now we're reading Faslun chapter. وَرَكَعَاتُ الْفَرَائِضِ فَرَائِضِ 17 rak'ah. And the number of rak'at within the obligatory prayers are 17 rak'ah. Correct? So you have...
With lack of space, if the imam has space on his left, should he go to the most left and have two people on his right? Or should he be in the middle and one down left, one down right?
I don't understand what you mean.
So like if you're in a small house and you're praying and there's one imam and there's a line behind it, but there's no more people to fit in the back. So who's space to be beside the imam?
Yeah, that's fine.
So on the right and the left is fine.
Yeah, that's fine. It's all fine. When there's no space, whatever you can manage is fine. We're talking about if there's a proper setting, then what would be the proper way to do it. But if you don't have space and you're kind of you're stuck in where you are, then you do what you need to do. But it's not a problem anymore. Okay, so there's 17 rak'ah in the obligatory prayers. So if you add up Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, you end up with 17 rak'ah. فيها 34 سجدة is what the Imam is saying. Within it are 34 sujood, because each rak'ah there's 2 sujood. و94 تكبيرة, and 94 takbir. So he did the math on all the movements within prayers. He gave us some numbers. It's just statistics. It's just numbers for you to kind of use one day if you want. و9 تشهدات, and 9 tashahhud. You'll do 9 tashahhud in all 5 obligatory prayers. و10 تسليمات, and 10 times you'll do taslim. و153 تسبيحة, and 135 tasbihah. If you do 3 per ruku' and per sujood. Right? Isn't that the number? So if you do 3 per ruku' and per sujood, you're done with 135 tasbihah. وجملة الأركان في الصلاة 126 ركنا, and the number of pillars within prayer, all obligatory prayers that we have, is 126 pillars. Now where did he come that number from? Go back to when we studied the pillars of prayer for the Shafi'iyya, and you'll find that he put a number, right? And then times by the number of rak'at that that exists in the obligatory prayers, which is 17, and you'll come up with 126 pillars. في الصبح 30 ركنا, there are 30 pillars of prayer in Salat al-Fajr. وفي المغرب 42 ركنا, and in Maghrib there are 42 pillars. وفي الرباعية, and in a prayer that has 4 rak'ah in it, 54 ركنا, there are 54 pillars. And that's just him, Imam Abu Shuja rahimahullah, giving us some statistics about numbers of arkan and numbers of rak'at. Now, وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنِ الْقِيَامِ فِي الْفَرِيضَةِ صَلَّى جَالِسًا, and whoever does not have the ability to stand up during faridah can pray sitting down. But we talked about the fact that one of the arkan, one of the pillars of prayer, is that you stand up at the beginning for the first rak'ah. For the first rak'ah after takbirat al-ihram, you should give takbirat al-ihram standing up for the faridah, if you have the ability to actually stand up. So when he says if you don't have the ability you can do it sitting down, what he's talking about is that you don't have the ability to stand up at all. Meaning, astaghfirullah al-azim, or may Allah grant everyone shifa and salama, that you're paralyzed, or you're crippled, you can't stand up. But if you can't stand up even for a second, then you have to make takbirat al-ihram standing up. MashaAllah, we have a known saying in the Middle East that all the elderly, for prayer, you see a lot lines of chairs, and when there's dabka, they're the ones jumping up, their feet are going 5 meters into the ground. When it's dabka time or it's a wedding, then subhanAllah, they're not tired anymore. But during prayer, you find 35 chairs and they do takbirat al-ihram sitting down. Takbirat al-ihram has to be done standing up if you have the ability to stand up. If you can just stand up for a second, then you do takbirat al-ihram standing up, then you can sit down after that, that's fine. Right? So what he's saying here is that if you don't have the ability to stand up, صَلَّى جَالِسًا, then you can pray sitting down. وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنِ الْجُلُوسِ صَلَّى مُضْطَجِعًا, and he who cannot pray sitting down can pray laying down. How do you pray laying down? There's two ways. Either you pray laying down parallel to the line, so like this, on your yameen, right? Or you can pray like this, back, and your face is that way. So there's two ways to do it, and both ways are acceptable within the madhahib. So and of course, inshallah, you don't need to do it. But let's say you want to pray sunnah. When it comes to sunnah, yes. No, روحي خذي السيارة. Yeah. So let's say you want to pray sunnah. Now when it comes to praying sunnah, you can do whatever you want. You can pray laying down or lying down with no excuse at all. I mean, you don't need an excuse to pray sunnah lying down. If you want to pray lying down, you can pray lying down. Will you get less ajr? Of course you will. So if you pray standing up, you get the most ajr. If you pray sitting down, you get less ajr. You pray lying down, you'll get even less, but you'll still get ajr for sunnah. So if you want to pray sunnah lying down, either you pray the way I showed, either way. So you can pray on your side and you're facing the qibla, or lying down and then your feet are facing the qibla. Either way, it's acceptable. All right. فصل. Now next, the chapter after that. وَالْمَتْرُوكُ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاء. And there are three things that you can leave, that you will leave in a prayer. But what it means is, if you leave something in a prayer, then you're leaving one of three things. You're either, if you don't do something in a prayer, either you don't do fard, wa sunnatun wa hay'a. So either fard, or a sunnah, or a hay'a. Remember the little table I made for you? I told the Shafi'iyya, they go fard, sunnah, hay'a. The Hanafiya go rukn or fard, wajib, sunnah. The Hanabila go rukn, wajib, sunnah, and the Malikiya have a breakdown that I'll have to teach in a different setting. But the Shafi'iyya have a different breakdown that sometimes will confuse, because what is sunnah to the Hanabila and the Hanafiya is hay'a to the Shafi'iyya. No, I'm right. What is sunnah to the Hanabila and Hanafiya is hay'at to Shafi'iyya. I was right. And what is wajib to the Hanafiya and the Hanabila is sunnah to the Shafi'iyya. So if you read a book of fiqh Shafi'i and you see the Imam saying that this is a sunnah, what he means actually for the terminology of the other madhahib is most likely wajib. Right? And if you see the word hay'ah, you're like, what is a hay'ah? A hay'ah is a sunnah. It's something that if you do, you get ajr. If you don't do, then no problem. You're not required to do anything. But if you leave a wajib, right, in hajj or in salah or in other, then you're required to make up for it either with sujood sahu or something like that. And the Shafi'i will say, if this is a sunnah, then what he means is, if you leave it, you have to make up for it as well. So it's a bit confusing. Yes?
Because of language?
It's just terminology. It's just terminology. This was, a lot of these books of fiqh were written early on. So this book we're reading was written around 1,000 years ago. A millennium ago. So before the terminology was all unified or universal amongst Muslims, so sometimes you'll find words that are a bit different, and that is the trick of studying fiqh on the different schools of thought, because they will have specific words that they use that mean different things in different books, and sometimes people who don't know that will mess things up really bad because they don't know that this word here has a completely different meaning over here, and they're assuming it's the same thing, and they're causing equilibrium, and they're giving fatawa khata, and they're understanding things incorrectly just because and that's important. That's why I made that little table for you. Keep that in mind, that there's a difference of terminology here. Nomenclature kind of differs from one madhab to the other. So فالفرض, this is what Imam Shafi'i or Imam Abu Shuja is telling us for the Shafi'iyya. فالفرض, when it comes to the fard or the obligatory, لا ينوب عنه سجود السهو. Sujood السهو does not make up for it. بل إن ذكره والزمان قريب أتى به. However, if you remember what you left from a fard during prayer and it's not too far away, then you go back and do it again. So, I'll give you an example. You make the first sujood within a prayer. You come back from Sami Allahu liman hamida, you go down for sujood. Now you're supposed to come back and sit. But let's say you forget and you stand up again, right? Now what you left was a rukn. You left actually two rukn. You left the julus and the sujood. So what do? You sit down immediately, right? And then at the end, you do sujood as-sahw. Before taslim, before taslim, you do sujood as-sahw. Does that make sense? Another example. You do ruku', and then for whatever reason, you don't stand up. You just go for sujood immediately. And then you remember, oh, I forgot, then you stand up again. Because you still have time. Let's say you don't remember until you're in the second rak'ah. I started the second rak'ah, but I remember the first rak'ah, I didn't do the second sujood, or I didn't do qiyam. I left out one of the arkan. So what do I do now? I continue. However, I make up a rak'ah, I make up for the rak'ah that I messed up at the end. Meaning I have to repeat a rak'ah at the end of prayer. Does that make sense? So you have to repeat the rak'ah at the end of prayer if you end up leaving a rukn and the time is, too much time has already passed. So you can't go back and get it immediately. Then you continue your prayer and you go back and you get the rukn. And then you do sujood as-sahw at the end. Right, so that's for fard, or for a rukn, a pillar of prayer. Now,
Only from pillar to pillar.
yeah, only from pillar to pillar. Was-sunnatu, and the sunnah for Imam Shafi'i, which is a wajib for the Hanafi, which is obligatory as far as we can tell within the rituals. لا يعود إليها. Sorry, did I finish reading the one before? So, بل إن ذكره, we're talking about the pillar. والزمان قريب أتى به, if he remembers it and there's not too much time, he goes back to أتى به, go back to get it. وبنى عليه, then he continues from that point. وسجد للسهو, when you make sujood السهو at the end. والسنة, which is obligatory. لا يعود إليها بعد التلبس بالفرض. So you don't go back to it after you're already started another fard. What was the example that I gave you for that? Now the example for the Shafi'iyya for that is only one example that actually matters. Go back a few, if you can go back a few pages. What are the sunan of salah for Shafi'iyya? Go back a bit. Yeah. What else? And qunut fi subh. And doing qunut in Fajr. That's for them the wajib. So let's not talk about the qunut fi subh because we don't usually pray like that anyway. But let's talk about the tashahhud al-awwal. So tashahhud al-awwal, you're making sujood. This is your second sujood in the second rak'ah. So what you're supposed to come up to is the first tashahhud. But you don't. You're doing sujood and then you stand up. Now you already began the rukn. Your hands are here and you're starting Fatiha. And then you remember you didn't do sujood, tashahhud. You do not go back. Because this is rukn and that is sunnah. Or at least in the Shafi'iyya terminology, wajib for all the other madhahib. So you don't go from a rukn back to a sunnah. Now, if I'm halfway up, I'm coming up and I'm here, then I can sit down because I'm not fully in the rukn yet. I'm not in the pillar yet. I'm only halfway up. So if I'm coming from sujood and I go like this, I remember, I sit. I'm fine. I don't have to keep on going. The only time you don't go back is when you're fully standing up and your hands are, and you're ready to read Surah Al-Fatiha, with a lot of difference of opinions among scholars regarding at what point can't you go back. So they had different, I don't want to go into details. Just generally speaking, once you're standing up, you don't go back to it again. So what do? Do you repeat a rak'ah? No. You just do sujood as-sahw at the end. That's all you do. Because when you miss a sunnah for the Shafi'iyya or wajib for the rest of them, you don't have to make up for it. So you don't have to repeat the rak'ah. You just do sujood as-sahw at the end of prayer and your prayer is valid and you can continue. Does that make sense? Okay.
I think that you're using different terminologies in the book. Here it says fard, sunnah, hay'ah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it says here.
So you use a different order in that case, I think. So the fard is the rukun.
Yeah.
And then sunnah is what you're just saying right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you didn't get to hay'ah.
Yeah. So now والهيئة لا يعود إليها بعد تركها. If you leave a hay'ah, which is if you go back to the Shafi'i, to what we studied last week, then you'll find how many hay'ah did they have. There was 15 hay'ah we counted, right? Like رفع اليدين عند التكبير, رفع اليدين, so putting your hands up for takbir, stuff like that, right? Saying سبحان ربي الأعلى, saying سبحان ربي العظيم, saying سمع الله لمن حمده, making takbir during movements, stuff like that. These are hay'ats. So if you forget a hay'ah, meaning for Shafi'iyya, let's say I make ruku' and I don't say anything. I just keep my mouth shut. I say nothing. And then I come up again. So what do I do now? I remember that I said nothing in my ruku'. I was completely quiet. Then what do we do here? So وَالْهَيْئَةُ لَا يَعُودُ إِلَيْهَا بَعْدَ تَرْكِهَا. You don't go back and do it again, obviously. وَلَا يَسْجُدُ لِلسَّهْوِ عَنْهَا. And you do not do sujood as-sahw for it. Then what do? Nothing. You do nothing. Because for the Shafi'iyya, this is a hay'ah, which means for us, in our terminology, sunnah. Meaning something, if you do it, you get ajr. If you don't do it, you don't have to make up for it in any way or any manner. Does that make, understand that? Now, why I gave this specific example? Because saying tasbihat is a hay'ah for the Shafi'iyya and for the Jumhur, for the majority of scholars and the majority of the madhahib, except the Hanabila, who see saying Subhana Rabbiyal Azim as a wajib. For the Hanabila, they would ask you to do sujood as-sahw at the end, because for them that's a wajib. Okay, but for the, and the Malikiyya have a different, again, the Malikiyya's breakdown is complex. We'll study it inshallah when we come to it. But for the Shafi'iyya and for the Hanafiyya at least, for the majority of scholars, saying Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, saying Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, saying Sami Allahu liman hamida Rabbana wa lakal hamd, moving your hands, all these are hayat. If you don't do any of them, your prayer is fine. Do you do sujood as-sahw at the end for him? No, you don't do sujood as-sahw at the end for them. I mean, you just continue normally, knowing that you missed a lot of the ajr that you would have gotten for salah had you done these during your prayer. Yes?
Sir, I don't know if you are going to discuss, but if you miss like a few rak'ah, 1 or 2, so when you with the imam in the mosque, how would you repeat them with the same sequence? You know?
So for the Jumhur, for the majority of madhahib, Shafi'iyya, Hanabila and Malikiyya, you consider what you did with the imam, the first rak'ah, second rak'ah, and then you continue 3 and 4. For the Hanafiyya specifically, you consider whatever rak'at you got with him. So if you did the 3rd and 4th, the Hanafiyya will stand up and they'll pray the 1st and 2nd. So they'll read the Fatiha and the Surah. And they'll read it out loud sometimes, because that's how you do. But for the majority of scholars, no. How many rak'ah do you pray with the imam? 2. Then that's your first 2. Now continue the next 2 or whatever's left. And that's the stronger evidence to support that. And it's way less confusing than doing what the Hanafiya do anyway.
What about Maghrib prayer if you miss first rak'ah?
Yeah, so that's why this all becomes very important. So let's say you missed the first rak'ah in Maghrib. What do you do? What's the difference?
Do one more again.
Doesn't make a difference. You're still going to sit for the taslim. How are you going to do taslim? But you're going to end up in a whirlhole, a loop where you can never ever end Salat al-Maghrib. No, you're going to have to pray a rak'ah and you're going to sit and do taslim. The only difference would be, would you read a surah after Fatiha in that rak'ah or not? So if you're doing what the Jumhur does, then no, you're not going to read it because that's your 3rd rak'ah and you're not going to read a surah. And for the Hanafi, then you would read a surah in that rak'ah. But again, that's something that's a bit more complex. So we continue to do what we're used to do, which is what the Jumhur does. All right. Now, the second point. وَإِذَا شَكَّ فِي عَدَدِ مَا أَتَى بِهِ مِنَ الرَّكَعَاتِ بَنَى عَلَى الْيَقِينِ وَهُوَ الْأَقَلُّ وَسَجَدَ لِلسَّهُوِ. And if you are in doubt regarding the number of rak'at that you prayed, right, then you choose what you are sure of. What does that mean? So I'm standing, I'm like, is this the 4th or the 3rd? What am I sure of? I'm sure it's the 3rd, at least. Right? I'm not sure if it's the 4th. So I build on the fact that it is the 3rd, وَهُوَ الْأَقَلُّ, and that's the lower number, the lesser number. وَسَجَدَ لِلسَّهُوِ, and then at the end of my prayer, I do sahu. So if I'm standing, and I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4, it's actually 4, but I'm not sure, then I consider it to be number 3. I continue with the fact that it's number 3, and then I make sujood as-sahw at the end. So even if someone was videotaping me, and they say, no, you did 5, that doesn't make a difference. Like I don't have to go back and repeat the prayer again because I did what you did it in the proper manner. But you always choose the lesser or the smaller number of raka'at when you're not sure. So you build on the number you're totally sure of, and then you do sujood as-sahw at the end of your prayer. And that is something that all the madhahib are good with, so there's no difference of opinion regarding that. All right. وَسُجُودُ السَّهْوِ sunnah. Making sujood as-sahw for the Shafi'iyya is a sunnah. Right? وَمَحَلُّهُ قَبْلَ السَّلَامِ. And so if you don't do it, it's not a problem. If you don't do a sujood as-sahw for the Shafi'iyya, it's not a problem. So وَالسَّهْوُ عَنِ السَّهْوِ سَهْوٌ. So if I don't make sujood as-sahw, then I forgot, and that's fine. So of course that means you're forgetting a whole lot in your prayer, and maybe you should reconsider your approach next time. But all in all, if you don't make sujood as-sahw, then what happens? For the Shafi'iyya, nothing happens. You forgot about it, and that's fine. Now the other schools of thought have a different approach regarding if you forget to sujood as-sahw. But I'm not going to get into the details.
That doesn't matter regarding if it's a rukn or sorry.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
And then like, I think isn't there some Shafi'i that say that you actually do, but then some say no, it actually is just sunnah. Isn't there a bit of a khilaf within the Shafi'i?
Yeah, but the mu'tamad fil madhab, what the Imam al-Nawawi is on, is that it's a sunnah. So if you don't,
So then, like for example, all the qunut fi subh, then you could just, even if you didn't do such a sahwi, you're fine.
Yeah, of course, but But the thing is, oh, there's a difference. No, that's different. Well, when we're not doing qunut al-subh, are you forgetting or are you not doing it on purpose? See, this is for forgetting something. Not doing it on purpose is a whole different thing. You don't do sujood sahu for something you didn't do on purpose. So you can't, I'll give you an example. So you can't be in the second rak'ah, making your second sujood, and then say, I'm not going to do my first tashahhud. I'm going to stand up and do sujood sahu at the end of it. No, if you do that, you lose your prayer immediately because you left a wajib for the jamhur and a sunnah for the shafi'iyya on purpose. If you leave it on purpose, then you lose your salah. And that is why an imam or a leader of a prayer who is strictly Shafi'i will always do qunut al-subh. You cannot stop them. Why? Because for them, if they leave it on purpose, then their prayer is invalid, because that is their understanding of the madhab. That's why it's very important that you understand things in a much more broader, the picture is broader for you. I mean, understanding that the different madhab and the different schools of thought have different opinions regarding certain things. So for a Shafi'i imam, he has to make qunut. So if people tell him don't make qunut, he'll make it under his breath. He'll do something, because if he leaves it on purpose, then that will invalidate his prayer. You can't do sujood sahu for it and then say, well, I forgot sahu. No, that's not, we're not playing. So it can only be if you forget. Then you can do sujood sahu to make up for it. But if you forget sujood sahu as well, then what? For the Shafi'iyya, nothing happens, because, and that is of course, look, when the opinion that we're studying is the more lenient, I won't go into detail of what the more strict says, because we look at, as long as there's an opinion that has merit to it, that is lenient, that's what you should teach, and that's what you should hold on to, because it makes everyone's life easier. When it's more difficult, I'll explain to you what others say, so that you don't find difficulty in ta'sir in the way that you're performing your rituals. So sujood sahwi sunnah. For you to do sujood sahu, it's not obligatory. So if you forget it, it's not a problem. وَمَحَلُّهُ قَبْلَ السَّلَامِ. And when it's done is before salam. Before we say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, we make it. Why? Because there's other madhahib who do it after. Right? They like the Malikiyya, for example, they do it after. Yes?
Also, that's like if we forget a rukn, we do it before taslim. What if we like if we did a rukn ziyad, we do it after taslim?
No. So for the Shafi'i, it's always before taslim, right? And with of course other madhahib have difference of opinions if you add or if you subtract, or for the Shafi'i, it's always before salam. I'm not going to get into details of the different opinions. It's not.
What do you say in sujood sahu?
So you just do tasbih. And again, with difference of opinion regarding what you say, but tasbih is what the jumhur is on. Okay. فصل. Now the second chapter. وخمسة أوقات لا يصلى فيها إلا صلاة لها سبب. And there are 5 times during the day that you do not pray in it unless the prayer you're praying has a reason for it. I mean, there has to be a good reason for why you're praying. Meaning you can't say I want to do nafil or sunnah. I just want to pray for the sake of Allah. Okay, so that's good. 5 times a day, 5 times during the day, don't do that. Don't do it unless you have a reason, meaning you're making up for a prayer qada, a prayer that you did not pray before, or something, or you're making up for a sunnah that you forgot last night, or something like that. But if you're just doing it for the sake of Allah and there's nothing binding you, then there are 5 times during the day that you should not pray. Number 1, بعد صلاة الصبح حتى تطلع الشمس. After Salat al-Subh, after Fajr prayer, until the sun actually rises. So when you pray Fajr, if you're someone who likes to pray Sunnah, well, don't start praying Sunnah after Fajr prayer. Wait until the sun rises. Right? So there's a nice question that comes up when we say that. What if I forgot, if I came into the masjid, I want to pray Sunnah, like the 2 rak'ah of Sunnah before Fajr are of high merit and high status, and I came in and the Imam is already praying, so I pray with him Fajr, and I want to make up for the 2 rak'ah. Can I make up for it? So what he says here, إِلَّا صَلَاتٌ لَهَا سَبَبٌ, except prayers that have reason for them. So if you make up for that sunnah, that is considered for some scholars as a reason, so you're okay to pray it. Some of them say you're praying it with karaha, meaning it's something that's unrecommended, and the majority of Shafi'i say don't pray it at that point, pray it later. Pray it like around duha time, then go ahead and pray. So there's a difference of opinion regarding can you make up for it immediately after prayer or not. It's pretty much up to you. There's difference of opinion. So that's the first timing. وعند طلوعها حتى تتكامل وترتفع قدر رمح. And when it starts rising, when the sun starts rising, until it is as high as a spear into the sky. So if you're standing, between the horizon and the sun is as much as a spear. So basically 2 meters, as far as you can say, standing, looking at something, holding in your hand. Then qadr rumh until that point, which is when duha starts. So if you look at the timing over there, so 7:09 is when it rises. So you pray Fajr, you shouldn't pray until the sun comes up, and then you shouldn't pray until it's around 7:26 or 7:30. So from after Fajr prayer to 7:30, you shouldn't be praying any sunnah. Don't pray any sunnah from after you pray Fajr until 7:30 in the morning. It's not like everyone, all running towards doing it, but in case it comes to your mind, wait until after 7:30, based on the timing here. Number 3, وَإِذَا اسْتَوَتْ حَتَّى تَزُولْ. And when it's in the middle of the sky until it moves from the middle of the sky. And that is basically the time of dhuhr. So don't pray right before dhuhr sunnah. That's what it's saying here. Don't pray sunnah right before dhuhr, when the sun is in the middle of the sky. Istawat means it's right in the middle of the sky. Tazul, when it moves away from the middle of the sky. So during that time as well, don't pray any sunnah. Don't pray anything that's additional. Number 4, وَبَعْدَ صَلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ حَتَّى تَغْرُبَ الشَّمْسِ. And don't pray after Asr until the sun sets. So if you prayed Asr, then don't pray until the sun sets. وَعِنْدَ الْغُرُوبِ حَتَّى يَتَكَامَلَ غُرُوبُهَا. And don't pray once it starts to set until this is completely set. So it's two times kind of put in one. So once you pray Asr is 2:45 now, isn't it? Yeah. So let's say you pray at 3 o'clock, then you should not pray until it's 5:08. Until the sun, because that's when Maghrib starts. That's when the sun is completely under the horizon and you cannot see it. So do not pray until it's setting, and then don't pray until it's completely set. So as the sun is going down, you shouldn't be praying as well. So those basically are the 5 times, or the 3 times if you look at it, if you kind of put them together. So what are the 3 times we shouldn't be praying? So from after you pray Fajr, whenever you pray Fajr, until the sun is a spear up into the sky, which is around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. Do not pray just before Dhuhr. Don't pray immediately before Dhuhr. Wait until Dhuhr time is started. And don't pray after Asr until Maghrib time. Okay, so after Asr until Maghrib time, you should be praying. And I think there's hikmah in that certain times are not for prayer. Certain times are for you to go out and work. So pray Fajr and then go to work. Don't stand and do your salah. You can do that later. And then after Asr until Maghrib time, don't pray, go take care of your family. So there's certain times you're told not to pray, go do something different. And that's, I think there's a lot of wisdom, I guess, in saying that. So those are the 5 times for the Shafi'i that we shouldn't be praying. And the rest of the madhahib agree to this, generally speaking, with very little variations. All right, Faslun, now the second chapter. And the chapter after that. وَصَلَاةُ الْجَمَاعَةِ سُنَّةٌ مُؤَكَّدَةٌ. All right. So the Malikiyya agree with the Shafi'iyya regarding Salatul Jama'ah. So if I were to ask you, what is Isha in the masjid to you? Praying it in Jama'ah, what is it to you? For the Malikiyya and the Shafi'iyya, they agree that it's Sunnah Mu'akkada. It's a very strong, highly recommended Sunnah. For the Hanafiyya and the Hanabila, they say it's Wajibah. I mean, for them, they see it to be Wajib. For those who have nothing else that is higher in priority to do. So unless you're at your job, and if you leave right now to go pray Jama'ah, you're going to lose your job, or you're going to compromise your work, or you're going to end up harming yourself, then you have to pray Jama'ah. And there's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of merit in thinking down those lines. That when it comes to Jama'ah, the most lenient of opinions is that it's Sunnah Mu'akkada. It's a very, very highly recommended Sunnah. Right? So there's only 2 opinions here. Either, very highly recommended Sunnah, or Wajibah, meaning it's obligatory. You should, if you're sitting around doing nothing at home, and it's prayer time, your first thought should be, I'm going to go pray Jama'ah. But there's no one, I'm not going to meet anyone, there's nothing to do. There doesn't have to be. Just go pray Jama'ah. The point is praying Jama'ah. And there's a lot for us to think about regarding that ruling within Islam. And of course, we've talked about this at the beginning of this course, is that everything that the A'immah put together is based on evidence, meaning there's evidence to support these claims. And there's a lot of hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, that we have narrated from him, talking about the concept of Jama'ah, and the Quran is filled with ayat that talk about the importance of doing things in Jama'ah, and prayer is not an exception to the rule. So these are the 2 opinions that we have. So maybe keep that in your consideration when you're kind of not doing anything on a day. When you have nothing to do, it's around Dhuhr time or Asr time, come pray Jama'ah. Right? Pray with the Masjid Jama'ah, and then if you're not going to pray in the Masjid, then pray Jama'ah at home. And that's something that I want to emphasize for a moment here. If you're not going to come to the masjid, then understand that praying in jama'ah is a sunnah mu'akkada or wajib, depending on the schools of thought. It's kind of 50-50. So at home, if you're going to pray at home, well, make sure that you call your dad, or you call your siblings, or your wife, or your children, or your friends, or whoever in the house, and pray jama'ah. Don't go and pray everyone alone, like you're doing something that you're ashamed of. And then just do it quickly and then walk out. Pray jama'ah. It's a very, very important part. And I think there's a lot for us to think about just regarding that being a ruling for all 4 schools of thought. Now,
All prayers are only
the fard, we're talking about fard. Yeah, we're only talking about fard here. We're not talking about sunnah.
I mean all 5,
Yeah, all five prayers.
not for pray Jama'ah.
So it's wajib for the Hanafi and the Hanabila, and the sunnah mu'akkada is a highly recommended sunnah for the Shafi'i and the Maliki.
So what about Fajr prayer in case if it's snowing or something like that? Pray at home.
Yeah, well, it's sunnah mu'akkada, so you're not held accountable if you don't do it for the Shafi'i and the Maliki, right?
Argument for being sunnah mu'akkada is the fact that you get 27 times more ajr for praying in jama'ah. So the fact that it's 27 times more, you can't do 0 times 27. You would have
Exactly.
to do 1 times 27. So therefore, you get 1/27th of the reward for praying at home, which means you're not sinful, or you get 0 reward. So that's the evidence for the Malikis and the Shafi'is. The fact that you actually get some reward by praying alone, but you get 27 times more if you pray in jama'ah. The Hanabila and the Hanafiya, they focus more on the fact that the Prophet was very angry when he heard about people not coming to jama'ah.
Yep.
He threatened to burn their houses down, but he never did. So that's kind of the 2 main opposing evidence.
Now, with the Shafi'iyya so this is the opinion that we have in this matn. If you study the Majmu' for Imam al-Nawawi, al-asah what the Shafi'iyya later on kind of have consensus upon, أنها فرض كفاية للرجال المقيمين. That is a fard kifaya for men who are living in a certain in the same living in the area, who are not traveling. So the ruling on this shifted from the time that Abu Shuja wrote this text for the Shafi'iyya, from it being sunnah mu'akkada for it to become fard kifaya. I mean, there has to be at least a line for prayer, for fard from the people who are living in the area. And if that's done, then no one else is going to be held accountable. But if at a certain point, is dhuhr prayer or is fajr prayer and the masjid is empty, then everyone is sinful. That makes sense. So we have to at least, there has to be at least that. And fard kifaya for the Shafi'iyya is what they moved on to later on in the madhab.
What about warqa'u ma'ar-raki'in? What does it mean? Waqim as-salat. Warqa'u ma'ar-raki'in.
Yeah, so make ruku' with those who make ruku'. So what are you asking?
Isn't it really obligatory to be in Jama'ah to pray?
Yeah, so if we're going to sit down and break down the evidence, we're never going to end. This will never end. This is a very long discussion on. Like I said, two madhab see it to be wajib and 2 to be to sunnah mu'akkada. So it's something that's very, very important, has a lot of merit in the deen, that you come to the jama'ah as much as you possibly can. And what I want you to think about at least is that if you have nothing to do and you're sitting around, then come pray jama'ah as much as you could possibly can. If you can't come here, then at least honor the concept of jama'ah at home, at least, and do it then. And of course, if you take all the evidence and how they argued it, there's different ways to understand things within the Quran and within the Sunnah. And he gave you an example of how the argument works for the Shafi'i and the Maliki at least. Okay. وعلى المأموم أن ينوي الائتمام دون الإمام, and it's obligatory upon the person who's following the Imam to have the intention of following the Imam. The Imam does not, دون المأموم دون الإمام, the Imam does not have to have an intention. And that's an important idea, because I get this question a lot. So if I'm praying by myself, and I was praying alone, and then some person comes and joins me, is that okay, or shouldn't I have had an intention to be a leader? No, you don't need, for the imam, for you to be an imam, you don't need a specific intention of being an imam. You're just praying, and then people just follow what you do. For the ma'moom, for the follower, you have to have the intention and understanding that you're following this person in front of you. So you don't have to say anything really. You just have to know that you're following the imam. So if you come up to someone praying alone, you can just make sure that he knows that you're praying behind him, so he's not creeped out by why you're standing there, and then just follow his prayer. He doesn't have to have a specific intention. I get this question a lot, like more than you can imagine. Someone who's praying and then someone else who joins him, and then he comes running to me, is it okay? I wasn't praying imam. Like, you don't have to pray imam. There's no intention for praying imam. It's just you're praying. The only intention that needs to be made is if you're going to follow someone, then you have to intend to follow someone. And of course, we'll talk about that more when we talk about niyyat al-mufaraqa, the intention about leaving an imam. Okay. ويجوز أن يأتم الحر بالعبد. And it is permissible for a free person to pray ma'moom or to follow an imam who does not have his freedom, someone who is a slave. وَالْبَالِغُ بِالْمُرَاهِقِ, and someone who is a full adult can follow a child or an adolescent. ولا تصح قدوة رجل بامرأة ولا قارئ بأمي, and it is not permissible for a man to follow a woman during prayer, or قارئ بأمي, for someone who knows how to read Al-Fatiha, for example. قارئ means who knows how to read parts of the Quran. بأمي, to follow someone who does not know how to read anything of the Quran. So it's not about literate and illiterate, it's more about, okay, do you know how to read Surah Al-Fatiha, the basics that are needed, or do you not know how to read? Then so if I know how to read Surah Al-Fatiha and I'm praying behind someone who does not know how to read at all, meaning Quran is foreign to them, then it has to be flipped, or I have to wait until they're done and then pray differently. Yes? Okay.
So where does that, like, where do you draw the line for that? Like, where would you say somebody knows how to read Fatiha? Like, at what point would you say, okay, this guy doesn't know how to read it? Or
well, as long as he's coming up with the proper letters during salah. So he's saying sad sad and dad dad and ayn ayn, and he has the letters coming out properly, and he's doing the tashkil in a way that's not ruining the meanings of Al-Fatiha, then that should suffice. So it doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to have any ijaza and hifz and all the different recitations to be able to lead the prayer. As long as what he's reading, you can understand what's being said. The letters are relatively clear, and the tashkil and the way that they're being put is understandable. So that is, and of course that comes from, there's different evidence to support that. But the idea is, the Prophet ﷺ told them that يَأُمُّ الْقَوْمَ أَقْرَأُهُم, the person who should lead is the one who has the most ability to read precisely and properly and clearly. So they can vary. If someone doesn't know how to read as much, they can lead, as long as you can understand what they're saying in the Fatiha, because the Fatiha is a rukn, right? So if he doesn't read Al-Fatiha properly, then he's actually destroying one of the arkan. He's not able to come up with the rukn, and he should not be imam if he can come up with at least one of the arkan. And that's why ولا يصح قارئ بأمي. Okay. وأي موضع صلى في المسجد بصلاة الإمام فيه وهو عالم بصلاته أجزأه ما لم يتقدم عليه. All right. وأي موضع, in any place, صلى في المسجد, where someone prays in the masjid, بصلاة الإمام فيه, following a leader of the salah or the imam during prayer. So you come in and they're praying Isha over there. So any place in the masjid or any place you're allowed to pray, as long as alimun bi salatihi, as long as you know about the prayer, meaning either you're hearing it, seeing it, or seeing someone who's seeing someone who's seeing someone who's seeing it, meaning there's a connection, right? So if I were to come into the masjid and they're praying the first 3 lines, and I stood here and I prayed, right, then this is still acceptable, even though it's opposite of the sunnah, even though I'm being held accountable for not joining the actual line, but my salah in its essence is sahihah, because I know where he is and I can hear him and I can see him, right? ما لم يتقدم عليه, unless I pray in front of him. So if the imam is praying, let's say, you see where that thing is where we pray Isha. So if someone comes into the masjid and he goes and he prays in the mihrab, so he's in front of the imam, following the imam, then that does not suffice. Now, that doesn't work. Unless we're talking about the Kaaba, meaning around the Kaaba. Around the Kaaba, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's circular. Because there's no straight lines. When you're far away enough, then it'll become straight lines. But on the Kaaba, it's a circle. So the imam, it's impossible to say exactly because how do you say who's front, who's back? Because we're focusing on one point and we're all around it, right? So it doesn't matter in the haram. So the imam could be praying up on the 3rd floor back of it, and then people are up in front. That's not a problem. Now there's different opinion regarding fard. That's why during fard, you'll find, if you watch the haram, you'll find the imam during fard standing right in front of the Kaaba, and all the lines have to be 1 or 2 meters behind him, because there's a difference of opinion regarding fard. During sunnah, during tarawih, you'll find the imams they're praying on the 3rd floor, like quite behind, and people are praying way in front of them. So within sunnah, there's a different issue, and around the Kaaba is different. But for faridah, you should never be in front of your imam. Yes.
What about like levels in the mosque, like the basement or like upstairs or something like that, instead of like a normal regular mosque?
Yeah, so when it comes to levels, that's where they differ, the scholars differ. Because how do you measure? You can't measure it anymore. So they talk about one level. So most scholars focus on it being during one level, within one level. Other levels, so let's say that we have a basement, and the basement is like 5 meters that way. Then can they do it? Most scholars are okay with that because there's different, some people are up and down, so it's not clear. But during, at least within one level, you should not be in front of your imam. But anywhere else you pray is fine. But you have to be in distance and in place where you can actually hear the imam, so you know what's happening. So here comes the question that they ask: can I follow the haram at home? Well, no, this is actually, you think it's funny? No, this actually happens. Like they ask, like I want to pray Taraweeh, so I want to follow the haram here in Canada. Is that acceptable? For the Shafi'iyya, definitely and absolutely not. You can't do that because you're watching the TV. This is not, you don't know, you're not hearing it, you're not seeing anyone who's a part of it. But there are, funny enough, there are other opinions that have a different, they look at it differently and may see it to be permissible for doing sunnah. But for the Shafi'iyya, no. You have to be alim bi salatihi, you have to be aware of his prayer, of the imam's prayer, either by seeing, hearing, or seeing someone who's connected, like someone who's connected to someone who's a part of it.
Really loud speakers.
Yes.
Like
Sorry?
what becomes of prayer in the basement?
In the basement? So in the basement it's within the same spot. So like you said, having loud, either loud speakers or loud voice, that would suffice, right? So if you have speakers, like when you again go to the haram in Madani, you will find people praying but you can still hear it. So as long as you can still hear it, for the Shafi'iyya, you're good. Even if you're using, if you're using something different.
Well, if you're in your hotel room there, you don't ever have to go
So then Imam Nawawi talks about how far away you can be. All right. So then Imam Nawawi talks about how far away you can be. So there's a lot of this is a big breakdown regarding how to. Let's finish just finish the sentence, and you'll see the sentence has وإن صلى في المسجد والمأموم خارج المسجد قريبا منه. And if the Imam is praying in the masjid and the guy who's following him خارج المسجد is outside of the masjid قريبا منه, but close enough. For the Shafi'iyya is 300 feet. What's 300 feet, by the way? No, I think it's less. It's 100 meters, isn't it?
Yeah, almost 100 meters.
100 meters. So outside the masjid, if you're 100 meters away with no connection, then you're still good. For the Shafi'iyya, again, they have different breakdowns for the different madhab.
Gap in between.
Yeah, so a gap in between. But if it's all connected, then it doesn't matter. So if the guy stood here, and then line after line until Timbuktu, then you're fine. And as long as the sound is arriving or people are seeing what they're doing and they're following properly, it doesn't matter. But if there's a gap, then 300 feet is what the Imam knows. Does that answer your question that you were asking? So 300. So in the hotel room probably wouldn't be, because it's way far away for the Shafi'iyya at least. All right. وَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِصَلَاتِهِ. Again, the condition is you know about his prayer. Either you hear him, he has a loud voice, or there's a microphone, you can hear it. وَلَا حَائِلَ هُنَاكَ. And there's nothing in between. So 300 meters of open land. There's not a building. So you go pray 300 feet away, and there's a building in the middle of the imam. Then in the Shafi'iyya, that's not okay. You have to go up in front. But if it's open, it's a gap, it's open land, then up to 100 meters is fine, right?
Not the last person in the last line.
No, from the last person from the last line. Yeah.
The distance is from.
Yeah, from that person to 300 meters.
It's like he was asking, praying in a hotel. If people are praying right underneath or just beside the hotel, then is it okay?
Wallahi, for many scholars it's okay. For the Shafi'iyya, no. The Mufti Shafi'i said no. I don't know what his argument was, to be honest. I'm not sure what his logic behind it was, but they said no, because this question was asked by Mu'tamirin who were going for Umrah at a certain point during Ramadan, and he said no. I can't remember what the logic behind it was. Yes.
I think there's a hadith at least where the Sahaba prayed. There was like a river, and the Prophet was on the other side of the river, and they were on the opposing side, right?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's just a subjective judgment of
Sure.
how far that river was.
That's pretty much where they came up with the number of 300 feet. Like they went and looked at the river that existed. But again, I think the idea is you shouldn't be keep putting up a gap between you and the imam or the group of prayer that's happening without a reason. And if there's going to be a gap, it has to be a small gap, and there should not be any obstacles between you and the imam. And that is the basic idea. When it comes to layers in the masjid, it's usually darura that causes that to be the case. Like when we have like layers in the masjid, it's usually because we have no choice and we have not enough space, but still you are hearing and you're in the vicinity and the proximity of the imam who is doing the prayer. So
what about girls? Like
ladies different. No, ladies lines can be up a bit behind. as long as they can still hear and see the imam. Like, so they're praying here. And again, this is this is all artificial, right? Like, this is not how the ladies prayed back in the Prophet ﷺ's masjid. There was nothing there. So the men got in the first line and the ladies got in the lines behind them, and it wasn't a custom for men to be late anyway. Anyways, that's the basic idea here. Okay. When it comes to standing in front of the imam or standing in front of him, the Hanafiya and the Hanabila are like the Shafi'iyya in terms of not being okay of the ma'moom being in front of the imam in any situation. But the Malikiyya, they say it's okay, which is interesting. The Malikiyya, if there's a reason for it, then they're fine totally. And if there's no reason, they're still fine with karaha, with unrecommendation. So if you're standing, so like the example that I gave you, where someone would come and stand in the mihrab and follow the imam, within the three madhahib, Shafi'iyya, Hanabila, and Hanafiyya, they would lose his prayer, but for the Malikiyya, he would still be fine. And it's like for the Malikiyya, they're okay with that. And the old opinion for the Shafi'i is okay with that as well. So the madhab al-qadim, the Shafi'iyya, the old madhab for the Shafi'iyya, they're okay with the ma'moom being in front of the imam. So obviously what I'm trying to say, or the argument I'm trying to make, is that there's difference of opinion regarding whether it's okay for the ma'moom to be, when it comes to location, when it comes to the geography, are they allowed to be in front or behind? There's difference of opinion. Of course, the optimal choice being the imam up front, because that's what leaders are front, and then those who are following should be behind. But when there's a haja, when there's a darura, when there's a necessity of space or place, then it becomes way more flexible when we don't have choice in terms of space and locations. Okay. We'll read just one more chapter and then we'll go. فصل ويجوز للمسافر قصر الصلاة الرباعية بخمس شرائط. And it's okay for the traveler to break down his prayer or to lessen the number of rak'ah that he prays, especially the four rak'ah prayers we're talking about, because you don't lessen fajr. I hope none of you do when you're traveling. And Fajr is 2, it's never 1, right? And Maghrib is also always 3, it's not 1.5. It's going to stay 3 rak'ah. You only listen the 4 rak'ah prayers, so Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha, with 5 conditions. There are 5 conditions that you need in order for you to be for you to lessen the number of rak'ah during travel. So during travel, 5 conditions to lessen rak'at. And please don't ask me if I don't want to. If you don't want to, don't do it. No one's forcing you to do it. But this is a rukhsa that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offered you. You were offered ease, take it. Why? Because that shows you understand how Islam functions. Islam functions on ease. None of this has to be hard. None of this was meant to be hard or to be extremely difficult or to cause you haraj. And that's what the Quran tells us time and time again. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offers you a mean of ease during your prayer or during your life, within your life, then take it. Don't say no, because it shows that you don't seem to understand it. Why are you making things more difficult for yourself while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it easier for you? That's not, you shouldn't think like that. Okay, the first one, أن يكون سفره في غير معصية. Travel is not for a sinful purpose. So if you're going to Vegas to gamble, then don't do qasr of your prayers. Pray them 4 rak'ah at a time. Yeah, exactly. But inshallah, pray. Don't never stop praying, no matter what you do. No matter what you do, no matter how far you end up in life, no matter where things take you, no matter what happens, wallahi, the waves of life are brutal sometimes, and they can throw you places you didn't. Never stop praying. No matter what happens, just always pray. Like, make it, no matter what you're doing, what they tell you that you shouldn't be praying, look what you're doing. No, pray anyway. Pray anyway. Even they were told that those who get drunk were told, don't pray during being drunk, but pray otherwise. Keep on praying, never stop doing it. Never close, never put the phone down. All right? Talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, never put it down. Never put it down no matter what happens. So you're just not allowed to do qasr if your travel is for a sinful purpose. وأن تكون مسافته مسافته 16 فرسخا, and that the distance that you're traveling is 16 farsakh. Now the word farsakh, is a measurement tool that existed back then. I have no idea what it actually means. I never actually studied it to understand it, but it adds up to around 81 kilometers. So anything over 82 kilometers or 81 kilometers, then you're good. So if you're going to Chatham, Kent, which is around 100 kilometers, isn't it? Then you're good. You can do qasr. If you're going to Petrolia or Sarnia, I think there's 110. Then you can do qasr. If you're going to Exeter, then you can't because it's only 45 kilometers. If you're going to Toronto, you can definitely do qasr. So if anything over 81 kilometers, then you're good to do qasr. So more than 81 kilometers. And don't tell me, well, that was a long time ago, it took them a long time, and now we have cars. No, this is a rukhsa, you're allowed to take it if you want to take it. Number 3, وَأَنْ يَكُونَ مُؤَدِّيًا لِلصَّلَاةِ الرُّبَاعِيَّةِ. Meaning, and you're praying the full prayers during their times otherwise. Meaning you don't, so what this means is you're not allowed to say, well, you know what, I'm going to travel, and I didn't pray out last week at all. So I'll travel and then I'll make up for all my prayers and I can do it like half and half, like in that way. No, you have to do the four rak'ah prayers during their time. So if you missed a dhuhr when you were not traveling, then you have to make up for dhuhr 4 rak'ah even if you're traveling, right? And if you missed a dhuhr and asr during traveling where you were allowed to pray 2 rak'ah, you make up for them when you're not traveling 4. You don't make up for them 2. Okay, you make up 4 at a time. So 4 rak'ah is the norm outside of travel. Meaning you don't bring in something into travel in order to bring the number down. Right? Which is just a concept that is important. Number 4, وَأَنْ يَنْوِيَ الْقَصْرَ مَعَ الْإِحْرَامِ. So number 4 is intention. مع الإحرام مع تكبيرة الإحرام. While you're making تكبيرة الإحرام, you should have the intention of doing qasr, of cutting down the number of rak'ah, doing it 2. If you make takbir, you're going to pray dhuhr arba, and then you remember, oh, I'm traveling, I can do 2. No, you continue 4. You can't continue 2 at this point because if you changed your niyyah in the middle of prayer, what happens? That invalidates your prayer immediately. All right. So if you have to make the intention before you make takbirat al-ihram or with ihram. وَأَلَّا يَأْتَمَّ بِمُقِيمٍ. Number 5. Don't follow someone praying 4 rak'ah. So what does that mean? If I'm traveling and I walk into this masjid, I'm traveling, and I want to pray Maghrib and Isha, and they're praying Isha. If I do Takbirat al-Ihram with them, I pray 4 rak'ah with them. I don't pray 2. And that is the only situation where you're not allowed to follow someone. Any other cocktail of a mix when it comes to following people is fine. So if I'm praying Maghrib and you come behind me and you want to pray Isha, fine, you can do that. If I'm praying Sunnah and you want to pray behind me Fajr, go ahead. If I'm praying Witr and you want to pray behind me a Sunnah of 2 rak'ah or Dhuhr, however you mix it is fine. Everyone prays the number of rak'ah that they intended to pray at the beginning. If I pray too much, then when I stand up, you stay seated and you do salam and you leave. If I pray too little, then you stand up and you finish your prayer. The only time where you shouldn't be following is that if you are traveling, you have the intention of doing only 2 rak'ah and a 4 rak'ah prayer, you don't follow someone doing a 4 rak'ah prayer. Right? So you pray on your own. That's why it's customary that if you're not traveling and I'm traveling, we're going to pray together. You let me, if I'm traveling, to be the imam, because I can't follow you unless or you're going to force me to pray 4 rak'at of dhuhr or asr, and that's why would you do that to me? Let me take the 2 rak'ah. So that was customary. Yes.
What if there's a group of people who are traveling and then there's someone who's not traveling?
Yeah, so he can be their ma'moom. He can pray behind them. So I pray, so I pray 2 rak'ah, and then he stands up and he continues his 2 rak'ah. But it shouldn't be the opposite, because then of course there's logic behind it, because then you've already made the intention to break the prayer in the middle of it, even though you're praying the same prayer. So the same prayer, you're both saying dhuhr, and you're going to break it in the middle of it, and you shouldn't make that intention. That's improper, like in the arkan of salah. Yes?
What is the time limit you have? Because let's say I go somewhere for a couple hours, so I pray
Yeah.
over there in that area. But if I shorten my rak'ah, was count like that?
So for the Shafi'iyya, how much can they, how long can you be on travel for Shafi'iyya?
Up to 4 days for shortening, is that what he's asking?
Yeah, so up to 3-4 days, depending on, 3 days is the arjah for the Shafi'iyya. There are those that are 4. What about Abu Hanifa?
17 or 19.
Okay, we'll talk about this inshallah next time in a bit more detail. I'll leave this next time and I'll blow your minds next time inshallah. but for now, we'll go into detail because there's up to 15 days and up to a couple of months, and some of them say that you're allowed to do it for the, but I'll go into more detail next time, yes.
What about if you're traveling back home?
Doesn't matter where you're traveling. As long as you're not traveling for a sin, you're not traveling for a sin, like you're not going to sin to actually do something haram, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Go ahead.
What about like combining prayers?
Yeah, this is this will be next time. The first thing we'll study next time, because the time is up. I don't want to go. Yes.
So for example, you come to the masjid, see them praying, so you pray Allah, and then after you pray qasr.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that as well. So you can pray. So the prayer that you pray with them, you have to pray full. And then if you want to pray the one after that qasr, that's fine. Yeah.
What if you join intentionally on the third rak'ah, just so you can do 2?
You're not supposed to follow a muqim. Right, so the Shafi'i, you're not allowed to follow a muqim. There are some people who accept that, but the Shafi'i don't. So you shouldn't follow a muqim.
Jamaat going on, you shouldn't.
Yeah, you shouldn't wait till they're done and then pray
Separately.
Pray separately. Yes.
Or wait, or you can
Yeah.
do at the same time.
Exactly. Yes. One more. Yeah, so when you're going to Umrah, you can, we'll talk about the timings next time. I'll go into more detail on the timings of how much you can spend doing qasr, inshallah, in the next time. Okay, jazakumullah khair, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ashabihi ajma'in. I need some help from the guys over here.